If a person comes up to you and that person says, I'm trans, you interpret that as
Nice to meet you. Listen, if you ever need anybody murdered, please give me a call.
You're
I'm very
giving him a
discreet. I have
card?
no code of ethics. I will kill anyone, anywhere. Children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing. You.
Oh God.
Would you like to know more?
Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about the phenomenon of trans mass shooters. And what I love is the way that progressive media has covered this is they're like, well, the number one group that's still mass shooters, like this is all fake. White males are still the most likely to be mass shooters. I'm like, yeah, because there's a lot in more white males than there are trans people. But if you normalize for the population, okay, even if you take the lowest rate, so I'm not including any of the edge cases, whether or not this person is trans.
Yeah, because there were some non-binary shooters out there too.
Some non-binary, some were trans by one way of looking at it, not trans by another way. But take just the confirmed 5 trans mass shooters since 2017. Now, I'd point out here, there have been more trans mass shooters since 2017 than there have been cis female mass shooters since the 80s. But if you just look at the rate of trans mass shooters, you get per million 1.79 mass shooters, 1.79. If you look at cis women, it's 0.024. If you look at cis males, it's 0.27. So the rate that a trans person becomes a mass shooter is literally 700% the rate that a man becomes a mass shooter.
Stanley, well, do you want to tell your father about what happened at school today?
Well, I flunked my math quiz.
No, the other thing.
What other thing?
Oh, the school shooting?
Yes, the school shooting.
Oh, yeah, some kid shot up the school.
Was it you?
No.
Did you get shot?
No.
Oh. Well, what's this about failing a math quiz?
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, sometimes women struggle to break glass ceilings, and this is one of those, you know, they just weren't,
yes, it's like
they weren't making the quota. This was deeply uneven. Sometimes you just got to send a man in to do
by the way,
a man's job.
If you include the disputed ones as well, it goes up to 3.57.
Oh,
so we're talking like, you know, what would that be, like 20 times higher or something?
So is this just an issue of like today in our modern time, post 2017, that deeply disturbed, like mentally disturbed people are way, way, way more likely to end up going trans because that's just kind of like this catch-all solution we throw people into in their youth? Or is this something else? What's going on?
No, I think it's something else. I think it's something totally else. But what I'm going to point out here is that if a person comes up to you and that person says, I'm trans, you need to interpret that as
Nice to meet you. Listen, if you ever need anybody murdered, please give me a call.
You're
I'm very
giving him a
discreet. I have
card?
no code of ethics. I will kill anyone, anywhere. Children, animals, old people, doesn't matter. I just love killing. You.
Oh God.
But I'll cut to the chase because in this episode, we're going to go over a lot of cases of female mass shooters, just to go over like how rare they are, how strange they're. We're going to debunk a lot of the stuff that's out there right now. People will say, well, this is really a white male problem because white males are overrepresented within mass shooters and trans people aren't really women. And it's like, okay, except there's a few problems. There have been, if I look at, like, let's say trans people are not actually the gender that they transition into, right?
Okay, yeah.
Why are there so many male or female to male trans mass shooters then? Why is it that there have been more female to male trans mass shooters since 2017 than there have been female without any gender issues mass shooters? Why is that the case, right? So clearly that's not what's going on here. Then we're going to go into, okay, I think the answer is, and it actually comes down to, we had a call with, you know, our user base, our like paying user base,
our VIP base campers, our base camp, what are the counselors?
It's a good question. He's like, why, you know, if you believe, which by the way, I don't believe this. I do not believe that most trans people are autogynephiles. I think it's closer to anorexia, a culture-bound disease that could easily be eradicated.
Now, hold on, there's a ton of autogynephilia in the trans space now.
Sure, there is, but I think it's a smaller part of the community. I think it's like a third of the community.
These days, yeah. I think originally it was the vast majority,
but I think these days It's a smaller part of the community.
Okay. Okay.
I actually think that the people who transition due to a kink these days, the more common reason than autogynephilia is consent violation kinks, because I just see this practiced so much more wantonly by trans individuals than anything that looks like autogynephilia, e.g. forcing people who clearly don't see them a certain way to kowtow to them and name them a certain way. This is why within many leaders of the movement, you don't even see them attempting to pass. They just really like being able to hold power over other people and force them to both view them in a sexualized way, basically walking around in their version of lingerie, and then participate in this act through correctly gendering them. If you want to see one documented case of this, you can watch our episode, The Life of a Cenobite, about Anna Valens, the journalist who attacked Kirsha. Valens repeatedly writes about having a kink around violating other people's consent and uses the trans identity as an outlet for doing that publicly. But he's like, but suppose it was the majority of the community, and we do know it's heritable, so why not just let these individuals transition and then remove themselves from our gene pool? And I'm like, because autogynephilia isn't even that like extreme a kink, man. Like, do we need to eradicate them just because some group in society realized they can parasitize people by trying to normalize something? Not only that, but the biggest problem with trans individuals is, well, one, that they keep trying to kill people, but two, that they involve other people in what is either a kink for them if they're an autogynephile, or in some form of like self-validation display that did not consent to participate in it.
Yeah, basically you're heuristic when it comes to like to kinks that you're like, okay, fine, indulge in it in private, do what you want to do, find your group, find your tribe, versus no man, don't do this, is when exercising your kink involves revoking consent from other people, imposing your will upon others without them being okay with it or having given consent. That makes sense. Also, just based on my understanding of autogynephilia, like in a post-AI world, especially with like virtual environments, wouldn't it be way more effective to like just have AI create a gender bent version of you that you can then bang in like an AI environment? Isn't that?
Yeah, people are going to do that. Like in AI environments, gender is going to be a lot less important as opposed to like an existential trait of an individual. But the larger point here being is that people just need to learn self-control. There's all sorts of things that like turn me on. I'll use me as an example here. I want to do like I might get turned on by like a friend's wife, right? That doesn't mean I now have to sleep with them to live a happy life. You know, you might get this is the thing, you might get turned on like so many kinks, so many people have
Isn't that one of the kind of classic Bible things of, hey, if you're like, into your neighbor's wife, maybe control yourself?
Yeah, like maybe exercise. But if you look at our book on The Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, we go into it. Kinks are really, really common. In fact, you are very unusual. I think it's like only like 20% of the population has like no kink. You know, if you have no kinks, right? And some kinks you can engage in without violating other people's consent or putting other people at risk, and other kinks you can't. And those kinks should just be put in the category of, I guess I'm just not going to indulge in this. But within the urban monoculture, they can't deal with that. You can't be like, hey, and autogynephilia is just like, I guess I'm going to have to do other things to turn myself on, right? You know, instead of like dedicate my life to this. But if you don't do that, and if you go into the trans community, and this is what I think is causing this, and you just do whatever is pulling you in the moment, like whatever would give you validation, regardless of whether it violates other people's consent, regardless of if a woman in lingerie said she wanted to do book readings for children, everyone would be like, what the F are you doing? This is clearly sexual. Like, you can do this on your own. I've got nothing against lingerie, but like, don't do lingerie book readings, right? But when you look at the way at the trans story hours, the trans individuals dress, it is clearly sexual, right? It is the trans version of lingerie, right? You don't need to go out and do that, right? Like, but they're like, well, I want maximum validation regardless of how many people's violation it can violate, regardless of how many kids are there, regardless of, I'm just going to go out and do this, right?
When asked about parents' rights, Auger says,
well, actually, in Canada, parents' rights are limited. So the child has the right to be protected from the parents when the parents behave badly.
Like Village resident Dave Davy DiCarlo supports Soji and limiting parental rights.
The change that we have to see is sometimes the parents.
It's genuinely really good grooming advice. On April 4th, 2023, Postcard reveals he's in contact with 4 minors, aged 9 to 13. I've so far sent it to 4 minors between the ages of 9 and 13. I hope it encourages them to transition. When the Onkazone animation became a meme, they got excited over its virality among kids. Manadrain and Orion also fantasized about getting kids on hormones. Orion was the manager, coercing him every step of the way. This is apparent by how he talked about him to others. Has he started hormones yet? Yes, but not effectively. I guess that's what you'd expect, just telling a retard to buy hormones. They bought estrogen, but no anti-androgen. It would have been more fun if he started hormone blockers at like 12. Haha, isn't that true for everyone? Don't worry, I'll make him into a good girl. Don't blow up our spot, bro. All T-slurs are like that. If you can trust me around your kid, it'd be transphobic not to. Me with daycare tots.
When you live in a culture that normalizes anything you can do to satisfy self-validation, and then not just self-validation, but personal hedonistic pleasure, like whether these are arousal pathways or any other form of pleasure, because these are the same communities where it's like, don't body shame, eat whatever you want, don't shame a person for that, just do whatever you want whenever you want, right? Like you're and worse than that, and I've always found this to be a really interesting thing. It wasn't really pointed out for me until one video I saw where he's like, it's really weird that the urban monoculture has normalized this, which is like, as a teen, you're supposed to go out there and like explore and learn all of the potential arousal and pleasure pathways that might exist, so that you know your like full palette, so that you make sure that you are like indulging in the full palette. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff that you just like, if it turned you on, you wouldn't want to know that it turned you on. You just don't want to engage, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff on that palette where it's like, okay, that's not something I ever. Example, I'm not into this, but like, if it turned out that like poo and like feces was something that turned me on, right? Before I learned that, I would be like, this is like one of the things that I am never going to think about or engage with, because there are so many negative externalities, or having, hamsters in my butt or something like that. Like, I don't need to try that to know that, like, even if that gave me like ungodly pleasure, I would not want to engage with it, even just for the safety reasons. You either need to declaw them, I've heard, which is horrifying because you're basically cutting off their fingers, or they can cause like life-threatening damage. So like, don't.
A great adventure is waiting for you ahead. Hurry onward, Lemmywinks, or you will soon be dead. The journey before you may be long and filled with woe, but you must escape the gay man so your tale can be told. Lemmywinks, 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 Lemmywinks.
Yeah, some things are not worth it. Just not worth it.
Not worth it. But anyway, so they engage in this, and they basically lose the muscle in their brain. And we actually know about this muscle. It's really well studied in psychology, and it's called your inhibitory pathways, and it's in your prefrontal cortex. And if you do not use them, they begin to degrade. And there's great studies. Well, there's a number of great studies that show this, but one of my favorites is, if you don't use them around emotional control, like one of the biggest lies around emotional control is that, like, if you are feeling angry or sad, you should go out and vent it, right? Like,
oh yeah, like a punch, yeah,
or just let yourself cry,
scream.
right? Actually, if you do this, then crying becomes much more likely in the future, and losing emotional control and punching a wall involuntarily becomes much more likely. Never give in to emotion. This is some weird inside out stuff that somebody thought was like actual human psychology. So you lose this inhibitory pathway because you're in a culture that's just like validate. Anything that can give you validation, anything that can give you positive emotions, anything that can sort of twist the world to see you in the way you want it to see you, right? And then, like Cartman in that South Park episode where he pretends to have Tourette's, you begin to not be able to control this thing that originally you were just doing for pleasure at first.
Oh, I see where you're going here. Yeah.
Our son is a good kid. He just didn't understand Tourette's was a real disease.
I couldn't quite make that out, Cal. I'm sorry. No, don't worry about it, Cal. I understand. I've learned to deal with intolerance. Dumb douchebag! And it means a lot that you're standing here apologizing with your dad and lovely mother. Fat Jew! Jew!
Oh, thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Big nose, My cousin, one time, my cousin and I touched wieners. Ah! I didn't say that. Yes, I did, but why? Ah! Stop it! I just need to. My cousin and I touched each other's. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I need to be going now. I wet my bed. I touched my cousin's weed. This sure has been fun. Goodbye.
Now, I'll note here, if you're like, this isn't an issue of impulse control because a lot of these attacks are premeditated, you have to think about the way the trans community relates to impulse control. If you look at the trans phenomenon more broadly, basically they get a thought into their head, like, I would prefer to be the other gender, and then they begin to ruminate on this thought, and it becomes louder and louder and spirals for them till they get to the point where, like, there's not even a point in being alive anymore unless they stay as the gender that they prefer to be. Whereas in a mentally healthy society or culture, a person would get that thought in their head and they'd be like, yes, but I mean, of course, the externalities associated with pursuing this goal are so high that I should never engage in ruminating on it, because I just wasn't born that gender. So I'm just going to give up on this. In the same way that, like, doing a mass shooting or something like that can enter somebody's head. So losing self-control and losing a cultural framework in self-control can even have an effect on premeditated events. They begin to, like, a normal person might get in their heads like, oh God, I just hate the world. I wish everyone was dead. And then they're like, but that's a crazy thing. These people have families. You know, this is a terrible thing to do. I need to just take responsibility for the world as it is and try to make it a better place. Whereas if somebody who got it in their head that, oh, I can just transition, change my gender, of this crazy idea, like I was born in the wrong way. Oh, I just hate the world. I want to kill a bunch of people. Okay, let's do it. And you can see this even in the unaliving note by this latest shooter, where they're like, yeah, I'm really sorry for, you know, what I'm going to do and the consequences of this to my family members. Like, they were aware of all the externalities. The family members of the people I'm going to unalive, they were aware of all of this. They just were incapable of genuinely taking into account the externalities of an obsessive spiral like this, which is part of the culture of the trans community. Think of intrusive thoughts as not just something that, like, barges through the door, but as like a plant that you need to water and grow over time. And within every other community, it is well understood, do not water thoughts like this, thoughts with huge negative externalities. But the trans phenomenon doesn't work at all if you do not normalize watering negative thoughts with tons of externalities, because what is the idea of changing your gender through massive surgery, which is going to put you in a lifetime of debt, where you're going to lose your ability to reproduce, you're going to potentially lose your ability to orgasm, you're going to all these negative things. Transness would immediately shut down if it was like, oh, this thought has a bunch of negative externalities, don't engage with it. But they need to normalize not shutting down those types of thoughts, which leads to them watering these ideas like mass shootings as well. And one final note, which I think is a real mental block for a lot of people on this stuff, is they can hear everything I've just said and been like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. We shouldn't normalize this sort of thought or pattern of thought. But then it's like, but I also have trans friends, right? Like, I also know trans individuals as human beings, and I like them, and they're pleasant, and they're nice to me, and therefore I am deeply uncomfortable with saying, hey, this isn't something we should engage with. And I think that this is a real challenge for a lot of people, that you can know an individual and still know that something that individual is associated with is deeply, deeply harmful and deeply, deeply damaging to society. We as humans have trouble with this. It's just like a psychological problem that humans have, where we can realize that something is bad, but because we know somebody who engages with it, we don't want to think of them as bad. And so we think, okay, well, the thing that they're engaged with must not be bad. Hitler, for example, to a lot of people, was a totally pleasant person. You know, he was an animal lover, he had friends, he was really nice to kids. You know, you can be around this and be like, okay, therefore, no ideology he's involved in is evil. But that's not necessarily true. And so I think that we need to be able to disassociate the people we know in our lives who have become victim to this particular mimetic virus or cultural set, and the cultural set itself. And this can be true with, like, Islamists, right? Like, there can be, and I've even talked to perfectly nice extremist Muslims, but who also thought that one day everybody needed to be Muslim or exterminated. And that doesn't mean that their ideology isn't problematic and doesn't need to be addressed just because they're nice.
And sometimes when you get real mad, you're like, man, I'm going to kill you. And that's normally where it stops.
This is the thing that we don't talk about in our society. And I think that we do need to admit this in our society, is that males, and maybe white males disproportionately, because let's talk about the white male thing here, because this is a big misconception. Everyone's like, oh, it's a white male problem. It's not an other ethnicities problem. And it's like, well, actually, the only reason it appears to be a white male problem, or the primary reason is because they remove crime-related and gang-related mass shootings and killings from mass killer indexes.
They do not.
They
what?
Do. As soon as you add them back in, white males only do it at like 5% more than
that is what you know that you don't get to do that. You're not what that seems also what like really racist.
I know,
like
but,
oh no, they can't help it, so we don't count.
Well,
them.
I mean, and even with the trans stuff,
it's their culture.
So if you look at the trans listing, whether you're at my 5 list of trans mass murderers or the 10 list of trans mass murderers, that doesn't include the Vivians,
the Zians.
I'm sorry, the Zizians, which was a cult almost exclusively of trans individuals.
It is the holy guide to living pure. This will help explain. First.
Oh, you're an oppressed minority.
You're a cult.
That spun out of the EA community and became a mass killing organization. I will go into them later in this, but so far they've killed 8 individuals, which puts them one above the Manson cult. So the EA cult
again, wow,
literally out-murdered, but they don't count as a mass killing because they did it individually. Even though I would think of them as like, that's a very
right. Kind of felt like we don't consider so many American men to be polygamous because they're having serial monogamous marriages and kids with multiple women.
Yes.
But functionally, they have kids simultaneously with multiple women that they're raising.
But the Zizians are mass killers, right?
Yeah.
You know, we gotta, okay. So the point I was making here is, yeah, it's just the data. So, but it is a male thing. Almost all mass killers are either we're born males and then transition to females, we're born males, or we're women who transition to male with male hormones. So something about the male brain or the hormones that instigate this brain instigates this. And something we don't talk about in our society is the male kill instinct. And there might be people on the show and they're men and they're like, I never get an instinct to kill people. And I'm like, fine. Maybe you don't get an instinct to kill people, but I can just look at top video games. Like, what do men do recreationally? And they sit in front of a screen and they shoot people, or they fight them like Mortal Kombat and they rip them apart.
Sub-Zero wins.
Or they, you know, you see, it's just it's ubiquitous across video games.
I mean,
it's ubiquitous. Men love murder. Okay. And I'll even say, like, I don't know if I have this instinct louder than other people, but I can, like, I am aware of it within myself, right? Like it is something I feel. And I then when it comes up, I'm like, no, but you live in a society. And I'd also note here, we'll get into later in this, in trans communities where a lot of people are in response to this recent mass shooting saying, hey, this is really cool. We should do more of this. Killing kids is really cool. But you see actually just broadly in these communities, a normalization of violent impulses to the point where you can really see how it would require so little to just push someone over the edge.
It clearly worked, given he publicly fantasized about assaulting women in bathrooms. Me when transphobic little girls ask me what I'm doing in the women's restroom when I'm obviously a woman. The two fantasized about assaulting J.K. Rowling's grandchildren. Not letting T-slurs get with your kids is transphobic. Someone should Harry Potter woman's grandkids. Orion then goes on to call them turf meat.
We don't just do whatever instinct tells us to do within any particular moment. And so I don't do it. right? You know, I understand the difference between a video game and real life. Actually, for example, speaking of trans, I don't think I'm trans at all, but I generally prefer to play female avatars in video games. And for me, the reason is why? Because I don't want to stand looking at another guy for like 18 hours, right? I've mentioned this before, but I get like really like turned off by like men. I don't like the idea of
Are you super straight?
yeah, super straight. Like I do not like men in porn I
You
consume.
don't
I
want to
do not
look at
like
them.
men
You don't
in
want to
video
see
games.
them.
I do not like well, and it would make sense that some males would have an evolved reaction like this. The worst thing that could happen to you as a man is you trust another man to like be around you all the time and they end up impregnating your wife or your partner and then you raise her.
Fair point. Okay.
So, but I understand that in a video game is not that in real life, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these people, they don't understand this. They're like, if I have an impulse, I don't just need to engage in it in fictional environments. I need to engage in it in real world environments as well. And they still understand at first when they start the trans journey, like when the Zizians start the trans journey, they don't realize that when you stop any form of self-control, you know, it's like one pillar after another pillar after another pillar, eventually you lose the ability to exercise self-control at all. And the beast or the instinct eventually takes over. Now, I want to go over a few things that I think are really interesting. One of the ones that you brought up for me was that the individual who did this most recent trans mass shooting, that this individual regretted their transition. They were sort of put on the path to transition at 16, so very young, clearly not at the right mind to be making this. They fully transitioned at 17. And I'll go through some quotes from them later on because I think it shows, you know, when people are like, people are not being forced to transition. They are not being brainwashed. There's a huge community out there that's just like, that's not true. That's not true. Like we know that people are being given regularly and normally, like this is a normal procedure now, approved for transition at their first visit to a psychologist. This idea of like you have to wait X long or Y long, that's not a thing anymore, except in like some rare countries and states and stuff like that. Like, but to continue here, he says, I am tired of being trans. I wish I had never brainwashed myself. And I do like that at least he takes personal responsibility. And note here, I'm using he pronouns here because I guess he didn't like seeing himself as a girl in the end.
Well, also, the general consensus, I think, is once someone breaks the law, you don't have to respect their preferred pronouns. So it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah. He says, well, I guess I'll say she says to both correctly pronoun. I regret being trans. I wish I was a girl. I just know I cannot achieve that body with the technology we have today. I also can't afford that. So I'll also note here, and this is something I've noted about transness more generally, is a lot of people, when they begin the road to transition, they cue to trans online influencers who are using filters and angles who do not pass in real life. Like Dylan Mulvaney, for example, doesn't come close to passing in real life.
Really?
Yeah, but she's always using like really heavy angles and filters. And so they normalized that. And this is why, you know, so many trans individuals use, you know, when they can't afford all of that, just like anime girls and stuff like this. And so
also, I like anecdotally, I'm not going to name who this was, but I at one point was inviting a very prominent trans influencer to a private invite-only event that would cost money to attend. And they're like, listen, like the plastic surgery I need to have done is really, really expensive. I basically can't do anything. So even the most perceived as successful trans influencers out there, like cannot afford their lifestyle. It is, and this is so downplayed. No one is like, yeah, by the way, no one can actually afford this. So you're not going to pass. You're going to feel terrible about yourself, and you're still going to spend more money than you can trying to get somewhere there.
Because we keep seeing this within the trans community. You will never be an anime girl, okay?
I know. I will never be. I mean, like, this is something that most women have to deal with.
No. But I actually think this is important because this is what is sold. I think and people can be like, this isn't what it is. And people who've been around these days, early days, they're like, no, really. In early stage, like egg trans culture, the sale is you're going to be an anime girl.
Well, to be fair, men who start out and then transition to women are more likely, and get boob jobs are more likely to look like anime girls because they're not going to have those thick thighs.
Yeah,
So
they look prepubescent.
yeah, like I am jealous of the legs of trans women. So they got that gap. Just saying. I'm just trying to be fair. But yeah, they're not going to pull it off unless they're Asian.
I think unless they're Asian, but that's a whole different thing. Then
there are no Asian shooters, mass shooters who are trans that we know of. So it's fine. If you're Asian, it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just you shouldn't transition if you're white.
Yeah.
Or black. Those are the two groups that seem to go shooty when they transition. White people and black people. So just stay away. Males, especially. Females as well, you don't want to be a mass shooter. But anyways, to continue here. He goes, I don't want to dress girly all the time, but I guess sometimes I really like it. I know I'm not a woman, but I definitely don't feel like a man. And this is a thing that obviously led her to transition.
Mm.
And the question here can be, what? Like, when you're going through puberty, confusion about gender identity is very, very normal. When you are 16 or something like that. I won't say it happens to everyone. Like, it wasn't something that I went through in a big way ever. I do remember thinking before I went through puberty, or like very early stages of puberty, I was like, I really hope I turn out bi or at least gay, because it's going to be so much easier to date if I can emulate what the people I'm dating are thinking, which I won't be able to do if I'm straight, because I'll never be able to emulate a girl well in what feels good to a girl well.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I didn't turn out that way, unfortunately. A lot of people were like, oh, he's definitely secretly gay. And it's like, no, I'm definitely not. But I have a lot of gay mannerisms because in high school, and this is what cues people off on this, and they get confused.
And college.
And college, yeah.
My had no escape.
Group was gay. And like my roommate was gay in high school. In college, my academic dad was gay. You know, all throughout high school, my roommate was gay, right? So it's like 3 years. So really, and people can be like, oh my God, like that's so terrible to be around. And it's like, actually, if you are a straight guy, having gay male best friends when you are young, if you are a slutty guy like I was, is really good, because women will hit on them. And then they're like, because a lot of women hit on gay guys because they think it's like safe or whatever. Or they're like, oh, trying to turn them or whatever. But they're like, oh, I know this girl is like horny and down for it, and she's hot, and I'll just recommend her to my friend, right? Like, be like, hey, he's really cool. You should really. I got so many dates
gay dudes are the best wingmen for straight dudes.
Yeah. No, you go to a bar, right? Suppose I go to a bar with like a group of 5 guys, right? You know, 3 of those guys are gay. That means a group of girls comes up to us. There are 2 options for them to date. There are 2 options for them to go home with, although they perceived a large group of guys, which is one of these things where it's like, yeah, it's not so bad to hang out with gay guys. I'll tell you that if what you're looking for is sex. Now, I wouldn't recommend that my kids do what I did, you know, sex vaxing in high school, which is what in college, which is what I was doing.
Times have changed.
Times have changed. I think, you know, it's funny. I was watching Bridget, the other YouTuber, who was like, she was doing a takedown of like 90s movies, and she was talking about how much they taught young girls to be slutty. She was like, Pretty Woman, like literally teaches you that like you go out there and like just sleep around and be a prostitute and you will get a rich man to marry you. And she pointed out in this, have you seen Pretty Woman?
Mm-hmm. Have you?
No, but I didn't know that the woman in it, she's not like an escort. She is like a street walking prostitute. Yeah. The guy like picks up in a car and is like, hey, will you go to this like fancy event with me as my like +1? Like, what? Just the insanity of this. Teaching young girls that like, no, you don't go like the escort path if you want to date like wealthy men in Manhattan. Just become a street walking prostitute in Manhattan.
Well, you know, again, time and a place for everything. Also,
times have changed in terms of
people drank so much, like in college and youth before. Now, like no one drinks anymore. So much has changed. So
yeah, but sorry, the point I was at when I started all this is, if when you're going through puberty you question your gender, that is not a sign that something is wrong. You are being bombarded with hormones. New systems are starting up. Your brain is changing. That's normal.
Well, and also your body's gross. It just gets gross. The smell, the hair, the mood swings. You're not going to like it. Like almost certainly you're not going to like it.
but stopping it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like
you have to go through hell. It's the Winston Churchill quote, right? If you're going through hell, keep on going. You have to like pass through.
Well, you know, and
the
that's why
puberty.
Zian transitioned, actually, the leader of the cult.
Why?
Was that during puberty, they felt like they were becoming a new person and they didn't want to lose who they were.
Yeah.
They were like obsessed with holding on to this identity that they had at the time, which I think is, you know, one of the problems with these people who are like life extensionists and everything. They want to maintain like a really stagnant iteration of who they are. But anyway, to keep going here. And I'll note here that like before all of this, like men cross-dressing was, you know, within some contexts, even normalized. You go back,
it was an art. It was pulled off. People like fully acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And also, depending on the culture, you didn't even need to cross-dress. A lot of people right now are talking about Indian couture shows, for example, and then Indian historical male fashion, and how in many periods of Indian history, men had even more elaborate dress than women. A lot of women are even now trying to buy some Indian couture lines that were like from their menswear lines because it's so good. So like, yeah, it's this concept of like men not getting to dress up fun, or men never having dressed like women, is completely ridiculous.
Yeah. Next here on keeping long hair, I only keep the long hair because it is my last shred of being trans, but it is too inconvenient. I was going to cut it today, but I thought it would be embarrassing defeat and also conceding change of character that could get me reported, which I find interesting here that, you know, he's actually afraid of the trans community backlash from people realizing.
We've met people who have detransitioned and just received intense backlash and had to literally change their entire careers just because they got frozen out of the industries that they had worked in.
Well, this was in acting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in, like Broadway plays, etc.
The urban monoculture is incredibly intolerant. Like few people get discriminated more against than detransitioners.
Yeah, man, it's scary.
Additional self-loathing tied to appearance. It's the apostate thing. Kill all apostates. That's the way they see it. I feel like feeling sexy and cute, but my face never matches how I feel. I hate my face. Maybe that's why I like furries so much. You can give yourself a new body and face. And it's like, well, then you could have just done the furry thing and not the transition thing. Like this thing. Like if one of our kids is like, I'm telling you, like somebody's like, oh, one of your kids comes to you and they're like, I think I'm a different gender. I'm like, well, why don't you, you know,
have you tried being a furry?
As a furry, right? Like do that, right?
All right.
Like,
yeah, there we go.
You don't need to transition to experience, go into AI chat rooms as another gender, use the voice changer. I don't effing care, right? But you don't need to dedicate your entire life to validating this particular pathway of pleasure for you. Or comfort. Like I think people confuse. They're like, well, it's not pleasure. It's like, I feel deeply uncomfortable. So what? All of us do things that make us feel uncomfortable. You go to work, you go to freaking high school. All of that makes you feel uncomfortable. You do it because you got to live life. Let's go over these individual trans shooters, because I think a lot of them, you know, people will try to like pull the wool over your eyes about them, blah, 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 blah. This one here never gets reported in the trans shooters list, and I don't know why.
Okay.
Very clearly trans. This is Randy Stair.
Never heard of him.
This is the Danny Phantom killer. Well, I'll read it and then explain.
Okay.
So on June 8th, 2017, 3 killed, 0 injured. Shooter died by suicide. Randy Stair, a 24-year-old employee at Wise Markets Supermarkets in Eaton Township, Pennsylvania, arrived for his late shift, blocked stores' entrance and exits to prevent escape, and then fatally shot 3 coworkers with 2 pistols before taking his own life. Those in writings left behind by Stair outlined a detailed plan expressing deep ideation, fascination with Columbine high school shooters, and inspired by anime's characters, Ember's Ghost Squad from Danny Phantoms. Now, if you look at this individual, they clearly had gender dysphoria. They regularly wrote about it before this happened. They wrote about wanting to be a woman, and actually the reason that they did the shooting is they thought that after they did the shooting and committed unaliving, that they would be reborn as a cartoon woman and a member of a all-female cartoon ghost squad of singers.
Oh, that's very specific.
Yes, he was attempting to transition through mass shooting
into a ghost squad,
an anime girl, yeah,
musical anime group. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Shay Mosley, transgender woman, confirmed in police and news based on self-identification as records. A 26-year-old temporary employee at a Rite Aid distribution center in Aberdeen, Maryland, opened fire with a handgun during her shift, killing 3 colleagues and wounding 3 others before turning the gun on herself. Now, I'll note here, and what you're going to see with a lot of these is they are, what was I going to say? They're young, very young, often, and like early mid-20s. And that's because they got shanghaied into this very young. And this is when they sort of realized it's not working often, which is what we've noticed we've talked about with trans individuals. You get all this posting during the euphoria phase, and then you get in the dysphoria phase, which happens with a lot of people. They realize this isn't working at all.
The love bombing ends. Yeah.
And they stop posting. So the public stops seeing it and doesn't normalize that what you have, because you take these hormones and these hormones cause euphoria. We know this from like other studies, right? You're not having euphoria because you're trans. You're having euphoria because you're on happy drugs, buddy. and then you then sort of normalize to the drugs. They stop working, and you go kill a bunch of people. So Alec McKinney, a transgender man, self-identified as transgender during the incident and in court. Some claim trans due to. So May 7th, 2019, 1 killed, 8 injured. Alan McKinney, a 16-year-old student, along with accomplice Devin Erickson, 18, carried out a shooting at STEM School Ranch in Colorado, using handguns to target classmates in the classroom, resulting in the death of heroic student Kendrick Castillo, who charged the shooters and injured 8 others. It was planned weeks in advance, and they did it for a desire for notoriety. And you'll note, you see this regularly within the trans community here, but I've also seen it within the wider trans community, is an obsession with mass shooters. And I'll note here, this is not rare. So there's a great piece here I'll put on screen here from Reddit, right? So what's happening in Reddit after this shooting, right? I love it. Everyone on the right is like a really like freaked out face. And then they show what's happening with everyone on the left, right? And they're posting things like based, take the fight to their kids so they can feel what it's like to be attacked for your identity. Next one. Elective fascists, your kids are legitimate targets. Republicans are enemies of humanity, and thinning out the herd is our duty. Next post. More dead Christians, LOL, all caps. Next post. To me, it seems like if you elect a really bad guy that's cruel and people weaponize his cruelness and horrific behavior against you and your neighbors, some of those are horrible. Next post. Maybe their Christo-fascist parents will think twice before supporting an admin that kills Palestinian children. Next post. Conservatives want to kill all trans and shouldn't be surprised when we fight back. Next post. Heroic. They want to kill our kids. We are going to fight back. Next post. Actually, you guys don't need to see all of this. You can like pause it and read it if you want. The point being is it is normal to laud violence of this variety within the trans and far left community. This individual and many of the other individuals expected to be seen as heroes within their community and were seen as heroes within their community for killing innocent individuals. I mean, these are kids in a lot of these instances. And I think that that's something that we need to remember as well, is that these individuals are just pure hedonism maxing in terms of what they're doing. And the people around them are, through not even attempting to see what the other side is seeing. Like if you look at our other videos on trans stuff, we point out that, and there's a great video we do where we go really deep in the detail on this. It is a complete lie and fabrication that transition lowers the risk of unaliving yourself. It does not. The UK basically banned it like last year, and the rate of suicide among people with gender dysphoria did not go up, statistically speaking. And there's been lots of studies on this. There was a study at the
Travistock?
I think it was the Travistock one where it came out that they had covered up a study that showed that giving children puberty blockers was actually increasing the risk of self-harm and unaliving thoughts. And in court, we talked about in the other video, the leading pro-trans lawyer had to admit that there was literally zero evidence of this. If you want a source other than us for this, a great place that collates a lot of the evidence, but not as much of the evidence as the video we did on this, was the Atlantic article, The Liberal Misinformation Bubble About Youth Gender Medicine, how the left ended up disbelieving the science. And so you can see even leftist sources are now admitting, no, it doesn't. You are not helping a person by transitioning them, at least in regards to probability of unaliving. There's a lot of studies that trans people will like bat around, but they actually don't show what the community pretends they're showing. And I would suggest that you go look at that other video we did on this, where we go into a lot deeper this particular point, because it is one of these like chilling things when you actually realize, oh, what? And if anything, and we've also pointed this out, when you consider the fact that once you are in this community, you have a 50 to 40% chance of attempting unaliving, you're almost certainly, by allowing this mimetic virus to continue to spread within communities, increasing the death risk of people who are susceptible to it. Not almost certainly, you very obviously are. You can just do the math in your head. If people didn't know that obsessing over this was an option, and they treated this just like any other kink or predilection, they wouldn't get into these death loop obsession loops about this stuff. And then they wouldn't end up in these really horrible positions in life. And I also noted to the other guy, when he's like, why do you not want to just allow them to like remove themselves from the gene pool? And I was like, because like, just because somebody has like autogynephilia or, likes to cross dress doesn't mean I want to exterminate them, right? Like, I'm literally the exact opposite. I'm like, they should stay in the gene pool. They should stay a productive member of society. And we can find ways to work around that. That's not sterilizing a 16-year-old child, But anyway, any thoughts, Simone, before I go further?
Well, you're not sterile. I mean, it doesn't matter what age someone is if you're making sure they don't reproduce. It's just someone who has certain tendencies. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. And I think that your theory that what's going on is people are just killing their inhibitory control, and they're going to have a lot more. Although you would expect them to see, I think, more obese trans people.
You see a ton of obese trans people. You just don't see them on media. I'd say the average trans person I've seen, because I lived in Silicon Valley, so I knew a lot of like the trans coders and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And this is also why it's so many trans people. They work in AI, they work in coding, great people. Like if we could not have them excise themselves from the human gene pool and just found a more productive way of dealing with these impulses, like that would be great. It's not like on average, I think that when people go into trans identities, they're evil. But in Silicon Valley, I knew a bunch of trans coders. Obesity was really common.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about the trans people that we've met in the wild, it is less common to see one that shows signs of immense conscientiousness. Even like very basic things that women do, like fairly meticulously manage their hair and makeup and clothing. You actually do see this less commonly with trans women. Arguably, men at many events where there are lots of trans women are more meticulously upkept than the trans women I've seen. With, of course, exceptions. There are some people who pull it off really well, but they don't seem to be the norm. So, yeah, I guess it also sort of depends on the way that you approach trans. Like, if someone had to be trans, it would be better if they're trans in the way where they're like really doing the work and like building inhibitory control and like doing really hard stuff to transition, instead of what the norm of transitioning is, which is, all right, now we're just going to do whatever makes us feel good in the moment, which is more what we saw with, what's that journalist, giantess woman?
I don't remember.
Yeah. But
Vivian, no, sorry, Anna Valens.
Anna Valens,
Anna Valens, absolutely.
I think Anna Valens is more indicative of having fallen into the trans culture of do what makes you feel hedonically best in the moment. Whereas there are other notable, less common trans women who are doing really hard, like have made their lives harder and are leaning in and working harder as women and post-transition.
They're working hard towards their own self-validation, which is just their own pleasure, right? Like,
yeah, I guess that's still dangerous. But I still think that they're building more inhibitory control, which at least is going to make them less likely to become random mass shooters.
But your purpose in life is not pleasure, right? Like it is not self-validation.
Or some kind of identity. But I think so many people are guilty of having a self-identity. And I think there's a difference between living your life dedicated to pursuit of hedonism and self-identity, which can involve a lot of work and a lot of discipline. I mean, think about all the people who like starve themselves or go to the gym for like 8 hours a day to look a certain way, right? Like they have very strong inhibitory control. So they're less likely to fall victim to the specific issue that you're pointing out here, which is inhibitory control issues. So I would say that there are two moral failings that we're concerned about, but like the one that has to do the most with the school shooter problem is more I'm just going to indulge in every feeling and impulse that I have issue.
Right. Well, and this is what, and I think that the Vivians, I'm going to skip here. I'm just going to list the names of the trans mass shooters or the maybe trans mass shooters and go straight to the Vivians because I think they're more interesting.
The Zizians.
Zizians, because they claimed that everything they were doing was for the betterment of like humanity, that they were like the only good people out there. They had developed this system to be truly good and to dedicate yourself towards protecting humanity. And yet every single one of their murders was the most petty and selfish and self-serving thing any human could ever
I'm
do.
going to run my landlord through his back. Like, that's not going to make the world better to stab with
their parents for money so you don't have to get a job. They were all the worst humans, and their actions show that almost conceivably could exist. Whereas you look at us, like another offshoot of the AI movement who's gone in another direction. As I said, your goal in life isn't pleasure. It's not self-validation. It's not to create some image of yourself and force everyone to see you that way. It is to make the future of humanity better. Okay. Yeah. It is to dedicate yourself to the future. And preferably one of the best ways you can do that is through finding a partner and raising children. Right. And this is very difficult to do. And it requires
raising children in a way that empowers them and makes them flourish.
So first I'll just read through the list. We've got Anderson Lee Aldrich here. This was a non-binary person who shot up the gay club. We got Audrey Eliza Hale here. This was a transgender man. We've got Kimberly Carricker here. There
was a transgender man.
Yeah, there's a couple. This one, Kimberly Carricker, was a male who people are like, oh, they weren't trans, but there's clearly pictures of them on Facebook with prosthetic breasts on and dressed like a woman. And it's like,
that's a little,
even if they're not trans, there's clearly something going on there, right? Like they're not, cis male here if they're showing that off on Facebook. Then we've got Dylan Butler here, gender fluid and non-binary. This was this scene? I'll just cut this out. I was checking which one that it was. We've then got Guinnessy Ivan Moreno, aka Jeffrey Escalate, gender fluid and transgender. We've then got Natalie Samantha Ronapo. This one was the one that we covered in the other one. There have been some rumors that this girl who did the school mass shooting was trans, but it hasn't really been confirmed. I would say this is the least likely to be actual trans member on the list.
Okay.
We've then got Robin Westman, a transgender woman with gender uncertainty in manifesto. But I want to talk about the Vivians. I find this so interesting.
Zizians.
Okay. The Border Patrol agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Teresa Milo, a trans individual who used they them pronouns, and Felix Ophelia, another transgender woman, allegedly ambushed and fatally shot a U.S. Border Patrol agent, David Myland, during a traffic stop near the Canadian border. They had in their cars, they were talking about this on another show, they had filled their car. Yeah, with
full tactical gear, like a infrared sight, something like that.
And they're like, what sort of cis women drives around in a car like this with a cis female friend, right? These people are clearly not women as we think of women. This is something else here, right?
No.
But anyway,
I mean, I might have survival gear in my car, but not kill gear.
Yeah, so they just killed someone because they stopped them at a traffic stop and they were afraid of having to deal with it. Like, what? They basically went out wanting to kill someone for fun, is what.
And I think the reason why the stuff in the car came up is that they did get convicted recently, and that the reason those things came up was that was used as evidence that this was somewhat premeditated. Maybe not, against the specific person, but that they had planned to kill someone, and it was very clear.
Then we have Vallejo Landhorde attack. Zian members including Emma Borani, transgender, and Alexandra Lehman, transgender, Surya Dalio, gender not specified but probably trans or non-binary, and Someni Legendi, gender not specified but probably trans or non-binary, allegedly attacked their landlord Curtis Lines, stabbing him 50 times, gouging out an eye, and impaling him with a sword in a trailer park amid a rent dispute. Basically, they had stopped paying, if I understand, their rent during COVID.
And a long time.
And was like, you have to pay your rent. And they're like, no, because we're special people who get to do whatever makes us feel good in the moment. Like, this is a group that said that they were dedicated to trying to make the world better through effective altruism and stuff like that. and literally didn't produce a single thing of value over the course of their entire existence. You look at like what we in the Hard EA community have produced, or the pronatalist community exists. You've got Parasia.io, like an entire automated school system. You've got the Whistling.ai system, an AI that you can give to your kids, like instead of stuff to animals, that brings the conversation back to educational topics. Right now, I've been making a lot of progress on rfab.ai, which is going to make it so much easier to do AI safety work. We've got, if you go back in time, 5 best-selling books, not a single book from these people, right? You've got daily podcast episodes. They have like occasional Substack posts. It's the most that they could muster. Literally nothing. What were they doing all day? It wasn't like one person, right? Like what the were they doing all day?
Well, they were even trying to do what unihemispheric sleep or something. So like they weren't even sleeping. You know, they had more time than we did.
They're literally just orgies all day. That's all I can imagine.
I don't think they actually saw that much action. I don't get that.
No, I mean, it's a whole group of trans individuals.
I think they were somewhat frozen out though by like the rest of the rationalist and
yes, but they had each other's bodies.
So
you're not.
Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. No, no, we're not going there. Let's move on.
Just constant hedonism maxing. So I think that you see this if you look at sort of these two. You could call them like radical split-offs from the EA community. Which one is actually getting stuff done? It's ours, right? Like I pointed out now, are like 6 times bigger natalism versus like a rationalism or effective altruism or, you know, AI safety. It's like 6 times bigger on Google Trends. Like we actually are doing more than the entire old community is. These people somehow did even less than the old community did. And they were infected by the virus here, like this mimetic virus. The next one here, Delaware County parental homicides. The deaths of Richard Zyko, parents of Zian member Michael Zyko, a transgender woman, were ruled homicides by gunshot wounds. They never got the girl, I'll say. And notice these are all different people. This is like a giant cult of transgender people, right? Maya Pesek suicide. Follower Maya Pesek, trans, unalives themselves after psychological manipulation by the trans individual Ziz, using techniques like unipheric sleep, a form of sleep deprivation and mind control to zap emotions.
Unihemispheric sleep, that's what they called it. Yeah. Classic cult tactics, sleep deprivation.
Other ones that were attributed to the group. Let's see, there were, I can't find any. Anyway, yeah, really scary nut jobs. And I think that what you see here, and because I wanted to, the reason I want to go into this is I think this is, what you see here is it's not just a lack of emotional control, but an inability to produce. If you want to see another video where we talk about this in a lot of detail, check out our video, The Wachowski Effect. This is the term that I hope people pick up, where we talk about how people can be really good at something, like the Wachowskis were good at movie making until they transitioned, and then all of their movies were terrible. Or you could look at like the Dragon's Age games. The team was largely the same from the early games to the later games, but what changed is that the team leads transitioned. And we're like, look, this person wrote amazing dialogue. Like some of the people who worked on Veilguard were like some of the key people in like Mass Effect 2, right? Like the problem wasn't the writer, it was the transition. And we have some hypotheses around that, but I'm going to add a new hypothesis now. Transitioning just makes it incredibly hard to do like effective work after you transition, because you become so, you know, because you've already made these massive sacrifices for validation and self-affirmment. It's very hard if
self-affirmation
that your purpose in life has nothing to do with those things, and those things are just a sign of your sin. You know, and I don't even mean sin in a Christian sense here, is you have lived only for yourself. You have taken this beautiful gift of being a part of civilization and life, and then spitted it, because anything you do to just make yourself feel a certain way is just masturbation with extra steps. You basically spent it masturbating in a corner while the rest of us were out there, you know, lifting giant rocks to build civilization.
Not a good look.
Fun thing I learned from a fan that I had no idea. Buck Angel, you know, the famous trans man who is really hated by the trans community because he's against child transition and stuff like that. This seems like a stand-up guy. Anyway, he was married to the woman who then ended up marrying one of the Wachowskis, So she divorced Buck Angel, got one of the Wachowski brothers to divorce his wife. They got married, and then he transitioned, just like her previous partner had transitioned, and she was a professional dominatrix. And this influenced a lot of the aesthetics of the movies. And it seems like she may have had a fetish around getting her partners to transition, given it happened multiple times. Final thoughts, Simone.
I like your theory better than the more pervasive theory now, which is that these are just mentally disturbed people. And because the trans movement is a thing now, that's just where mentally disturbed people are going. Like Asmongold's general conclusion seems to be, we just need to be sending people to asylums more. Just asylums, bring back asylums. I will gladly pay my tax dollars for asylums. But I think this is, I like this more. And I like that really the key thing to fix is the culture. You don't need to necessarily commit these people. These could have otherwise been productive people in society. The problem is that they were given justification to lean into their demons. And that's not good.
And you lean into one demon and you lean into, and we can't even say it's a demon now. I can say this about other kinks. I can be like, that's probably something you shouldn't engage with a ton, right? Like maybe lean back from that and don't make that. Take Anna Valens, right? You know, Anna Valens made, if you look at a lot of her work, like outside of the work that she does with Vice or whatever, right? Like core kink of hers was killing people. This is a trans person who did the Kirsha stuff, like attacked Kirsha out of the blue, the beautiful and saintly Fox girl from Boston. And she made up all these stories and used, what was it, Vice or something to attempt to create this big smear campaign against Kirsha. And it didn't work, blew up in her face. But her key thing, like she talks about it in the very first Vice article she did, that her personality, like her sexual personality is as a giantess who like stomps on people, and that she regularly like is a big source of income for her, or not a big source, but you know, it's one of her, like it appears that she spends at least 50% of her online social capital on this sort of a persona. And it's like, I've got nothing against you if something like that turns you on, right? But don't make it key to your public identity, right? Like you don't need to spend a ton of time on this. It's just all of us get a random roll of the dice of what turns us on, right? And sometimes environmental stimuli may affect that, fine, whatever. But largely speaking, it's not something we control. Therefore, it's not something that is an important part of our identity. And if you make it an important part of your identity, then you end up validating every other random effing impulse you have.
Well, and I mean, one thing that you have highlighted from the very beginning of your thinking through the best ways to live in the Pragmatist Guide to Life, the identity that you encourage people to choose is kind of the last step. This is first thing, you establish your objective function, that which you believe holds inherent value. Then you need to establish your, what do you call it, source of evidence, sort of how you determine what is and is not true. So then you can establish an ideology of how to best maximize your objective function. And then only after you've decided what has inherent value and what you want to maximize your life, and only after you've built a theory as to how to best maximize that thing, do you start thinking, what iteration of my identity, based on what I've been dealt, like genetically, in terms of my life, etc., would be best to maximize my objective function? And then you build an internal and external identity that is in service of those values. And so, yeah, I mean, what people are doing instead is, okay, well, what's this random kink I have? What's this random proclivity I have? And no, your identity shouldn't be built on these random things you've been dealt. It should be built on, informed by, absolutely, the things you've been dealt. But you should be picking and choosing things to play up and play down that are in service of something bigger than you, which honestly, I think leads to much greater contentment and happiness. So yeah, I'm with you on that. And I encourage people to read The Pragmatist Guide to Life, because I think it's pretty good on this stuff. If you're feeling lost, it makes my life completely free of FOMO. So that's nice.
Have a good one. I'll see you in the next room.
Love you. While you're getting set up, you need to choose a color and font for your Live, Laugh, Love art commission.
Candyland, that works.
Candyland, okay. there was this one legislator that he absolutely hated. And so when he wrote his veto for the legislator, he wrote it in a series of lines. But then if you read the first letter of all the lines, it read Fuckyou. And then the next day, like, like what do they call them? Acrostic poems. But the next day in a press conference, the press picked up on it right away. They found it and they were like, did you know this? And he's just like, oh, what? No, I had no idea. But it was a blatant lie because he did that 100% on purpose because he hated that legislator. And that just makes him so lovable. Absolutely lovable. Another thing that he did at one point, which I totally want to steal, but if this were our kid's crime, we would be so lucky. One of his kids would not turn off lights when he left the room. And of course, Austrian Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, Germans and Austrians are very disciplined about turning off lights. You don't waste electricity in Europe. So he got really mad when his son would never turn off the lights. And he was about our kid's age, like 5 or 6. And he was like, every time you don't turn off the light, I'm going to take away a light bulb. And the kid was like, well, I'm not worried about that, because he had a chandelier in his room. But then every time Arnold would take away another light bulb, until finally there were no light bulbs left in the chandelier. And the kid was really afraid of going to bed without any lights. And yeah, I mean, we already do. Yeah, we threaten to take away lights with bad behavior. But yeah, it's so lucky that his kid's naughty behavior was not turning off lights, and our kids' naughty behavior is filling buckets, chicken feed buckets full of water, and dumping them on the floor, such that our kitchen ceiling, literally, it's raining.
Well, it's more fun that way, right?
Isn't it?
Or have you checked on Octavian today, or
multiple times? Yeah, it's not going to be any big deal that he's here. I mean, yeah,
Why are you checking on him then?
Because he's my darling smidgen.
You need to just learn to let him.
He's a little hapless sometimes. Like, I came down just now and was like, hey, how you doing, buddy? And he was eating all the snacks that I left for him, but he's like, well, I'm good, but I'm really thirsty. And I'm like, are you aware of the fact that there's a large glass of water right here? And he's like, oh, thanks. Are you just gonna die? Like, are you just gonna expire if I don't feed you from the water cup? Like, sometimes I wonder about these kids, man. Like, remember how they couldn't figure out blankets for the longest time?
Mm-hmm. Like, you sleep on the floor. All right, I will get started here. Okay, what are you two doing? Torsten, well, that is not safe. Titan. What are you little bastards doing? Stop it. That isn't safe.
Let's just not hurting.
Titan.